Okay, who was here last week? Who wasn't here last week but watched on video? Who has the sermon memorized from last week? There was an operative phrase. Jesus does this in the Beatitudes in Luke. Jesus takes things and turns them upside down. And this week we're continuing, still upside down. So it's the Sermon on the Plain, and Jesus took common knowledge of the day and asked people to look at it differently. He took the accepted practices and the unbreakable rules and asked folks to consider that causing harm while following those practices and rules went contrary to what the rules were about. And last week, I suggested that maybe everyone could make a small change that might help you see things from a different perspective. So how did it go? You can share with me later, or maybe you journaled. It was the make a change, just a little one, and when you see things from that little different perspective, maybe say a prayer like, God, please help me to see things from a new perspective, or something like that. So we're going to do another round. You ready to start? You can do what we did last week, but also this. How about some silly ways to experience something differently? Cross your eyes. Jump up and down for a minute, or 12 seconds, or 1.5 seconds, whatever works best for you. Sing at the top of your lungs. Read a book upside down. Listen to music backwards. It does not make you hear the devil speak. Pet a dog or pet a cat. Establish a page on some social media app. Stay off social media, depending on what your perspective would change with. Watch more TV. Turn off the TV. Read a magazine. Read a comic book. Listen to classical music. Listen to rap. Turn off all music. Sing during church. Or don't sing during church. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's the golden rule, and it's in our reading today. Would it be a shift to live by it for the next week? Good question, right? Love your enemies. Do not judge. Do not condemn. We know these things. Do we live by them? Are we trying to just follow the rules instead of living the attitude? Everyone matters, right? Everyone. All lives, we've heard people say, but it rings hollow if we don't treat everyone as if they do. And there's the last bit of today's reading. This one's pretty fun. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. That's some attitude, some good attitude. And what Jesus was talking about in this Sermon on the Plain was attitude adjustments. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. I worked with a pastor once in Downers Grove, but years and years ago when I was a youth minister. He loved this place. He would, like every time we did the offering, I know I say similar things at offering, but he'd get up there and he'd say, we're going to have the offering now and I want you to give. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. It's going to be poured into your lap. It's just a kind of a vibrant thing. And he was a really exuberant pastor. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. What kind of visual does it give to you? Pouring, 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 overflowing, overflowing. Or if we're at the Peace Cafe, do you ever watch how the baristas make the coffee? Where they grind the beans, then they smush that really down so they can make an espresso. And what if that's overflowing and espresso beans are coming out of there, pressed down, shaken together, running over. There's this fullness There's abundance. There's a plenty for you and plenty for all attitude about it, just like through this Sermon on the Plain, just like through the life of Jesus. A fullness of community together, attending to one another. You ever heard that phrase, attending to? We have love one another. Yes, that's good. Take care of one another. One of my favorites, be excellent to each other. You're thinking of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure now, aren't you? Who wasn't, though? This is from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Just 1989, I think, 1989. Attending to one another. There's an equality assumed in attending to one another. It's not I care for you or I welcome you or I give to you. It's we are sort of side by side attending to one another. I attend to you as you attend to me. Attending to one another implies that we are together in this. Fullness of community, attending to one another. We make our community a better place when we engage in reaching out with love as our agenda. We make the church a better place when we practice not only hospitality, but true attention to everyone. A vibrant, inclusive Christian community living out love, respect, and dignity for everyone. The agenda of grace is love and acceptance. Everyone, friends, enemies. There's this attitude that Jesus has in this reading today. Notice people. People matter. Treat everyone as if they matter. Be generous and kind even when you don't feel like it. And not only with your friends and family, but also with people you don't necessarily like. That's the Sermon on the Plain. There's a nutshell there. Notice people. People matter. Treat everyone as if they matter. Be generous and kind even when you don't feel like it. And not only with your friends and family, but also with the people you don't necessarily like. It sounds reasonable. In today's culture, it also sounds political. When did basic principles of Christianity, basic principles of humanity start sounding political? I guess they did in Jesus' time too. Notice people is reasonable. People matter is reasonable. Treat everyone as if they matter is reasonable. Be generous and kind is reasonable. Be generous and kind even with people you don't necessarily like is reasonable. Even when you don't feel like it, that's reasonable. So why don't we do it? And I don't mean we, an individual sitting here who's like, oh, but I do it. It's not that. It's not the but others, but what about? It's why don't we societally do that? Why don't we treat people as if they matter? Why don't we notice people? Why don't we attend to one another? Why is it so much easier to classify people who are different as dangerous, evil, or not worthy of our time, or simply unimportant? And how, since we don't really think that we demonize the other, can we be open to consider an opinion that isn't ours? How can we do these exercises of getting a different perspective when we don't think we need a different perspective? A fullness of community, attending to one another. If that's the perspective you have, then I guess there is no need to change. If the community, or if the perspective is us before them, keep the rest out. What's mine is mine, and I have to take care of me first. It's just kind of contrary to the life and teaching of Jesus. Everyone friends and enemies. We are to attend to one another. Does that mean that we have to attend to the agenda that someone has that's totally, completely opposite of what we think? No. But we attend to one another in love, and we find common ground to work together on so that the things that we disagree on get smaller and smaller because we're working for the common good, attending to one another individually and on a global scale. I want to close with these short words. This came from a student of mine in a confirmation class 25 or so years ago. And we were talking about love your enemies, do good to those who persecute you. And they raised their hand. Back in the days when we raised our hands. No, I mean, I think they actually did raise their hand. I said, what? What did you want to say? And they said, if we love our enemies, then how are they enemies? Amen.